And the great feature of it is we get all that user generated content. We get those great photos of our food that our customers are sharing with us that we can turn around then and use on social.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to the Local Marketing Lab, where you get real-world insights from industry pros to help you drive local revenue and local growth. This podcast is brought to you by Evocalize, digital marketing tools powered by local data that automatically work where and when your locations need it most. Learn more at evocalize.com. Well, what's up, and welcome to the Local Marketing Lab. Joining us in the lab today is a guest with nearly 25 years of marketing experience working with brands like Subway, Domino's, and McDonald's. He grew up in a small town of just 700 people, is a huge baseball fan, and is a VP of marketing at Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken. Dan Sokolik, thanks for joining us in the lab, my friend.
Hey, happy to be here.
Awesome. Yeah, we met a few months ago. We've been to a couple of events where we've hung out and just kind of hit it off, and I got to learn a little bit about your background in the process. I thought, man, you'd be a great guest to have on the show. What I really like about your background is that it's really interesting relative to many of the guests that have had on before, because you've had experience working both on the agency side as well as the corporate side, and then even have some experience on the franchise side. So from a local marketing perspective, it feels like a good story that you'll be able to tell to kind of pull everything together. But I guess to kick things off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey and what got you to the position that you're in now?
Yeah. So, you hit the nail on the head. I think that's what makes my path a little different, is that I've sat in kind of all of those seats at the table, right? And everybody in those different roles has different priorities, thinks about things, views problems in a different way. And so it's really been helpful to me throughout my journey to have that understanding and be able to maybe proactively think about what a response might be from somebody in one of the other seats that I might have sat in previously, right? So I got my start in this crazy QSR world working for a very large Domino's pizza franchisee here in St. Louis. When I started working with him, we were at about 35 stores. When I left him 5 years later, we were up to 65, and I think he's over 100 locations currently.
Wow.
But that was all about local store marketing in that role. Now, granted, this was, pre-digital revolution. So direct mail was a big piece of what we did, especially in the pizza world. But providing tools to our restaurant managers to get out and do grassroots marketing was a big piece of that too. But so did that for about 5 years. It was really eye-opening to me, having that be my entry point into this QSR world, to see all the opportunities that were out there, where a career could take you. It was the kind of role I could have stayed in for a long time, but franchisees being franchisees, growth opportunity wasn't huge for me there. So I knew to get where I wanted to go, I needed to get some agency experience, and an opportunity to work on the McDonald's brand, managing some local market ad funds popped up. So I did that for what their largest field agency at the time. I had 5 markets that I managed, and again, different working with their co-op funds and managing their local markets spend, local market promotion management, etc. There did that for a couple of years. Agency life is tough, but then I got the opportunity to go to work for Subway in a corporate field marketing role. And I had a long run with Subway. I was there for about 10 years. It's no secret that Subway went through some troubles and some massive overhaul 5 or so years ago. And they eliminated the field marketing team. I was able to latch on with one of Subway's local market ad agency. So back in the agency world again, did that for a bit. And Subway rolled up their, to kind of pulled the plug on local ad spend, rolled all their dollars up national. So it's kind of like getting kicked in the gut by the same company twice there. But all good stories have good endings, right? So jumped from that, stayed in the agency world, started working for an agency managing the account for Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken. And I did that for a short time before the CEO asked me to kind of switch seats at the table and come on the corporate side and lead efforts for him. So that's where I'm at today with this incredibly fascinating brand of Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken.
What is it about Lee's that kind of sets it apart from the other chicken brands? Like, little background, little story on Lee's would help.
Yeah, so it's funny. I tell people that it feels like working for this old, stale legacy brand, but also this exciting, energized startup company, both at the same time. Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken's been around since 1966. It was started by a fella named Lee Cummings, who happened to be the nephew of Colonel Harlan Sanders. And Lee worked with the Colonel on a brand that we won't mention, but that everybody knows. Worked with him for a long time before the Colonel decided to sell the company, and Lee set his own course and started his own brand. So a lot of people don't know who the Lee in the Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken is, and so that's part of this really cool story we have to tell with the brand. But
that's cool.
The brand has had some crazy highs and crazy lows, and it's been passed around to a lot of different ownership groups over the years. But a couple of years ago, private investment group bought the company. That's who I'm working for today, and with the goal of really trying to re-energize and bring this brand back to life. We're at 130 units today, with some pretty aggressive growth plans over the next 5 to 7 years. We've recently gone through a rebranding effort to try to modernize the visual identity of the brand. We're working on new restaurant design new restaurant prototype for all the growth that we anticipate to come. So our restaurant, and as part of that, remodeling, refreshing our existing locations. Just an incredibly exciting time to be with this brand.
Very cool. With this aggressive growth plan that you guys have, like, you're obviously going to have to put some attention and love towards your local marketing plan. So what do you think of the things that maybe you might put some attention towards, or that you think might really move the needle from a local marketing perspective?
Yeah. To that end, it's all about building that infrastructure to support that future growth, right? Making sure that we've got the right partners that we're working with, the right tools in the toolbox for our current operators and all of our future operators to be able to go out and tackle things in the local level.
For sure. Have you seen any tactics that you've tried lately, or maybe some of your markets have tested that you found have worked really well?
Yeah, it's funny, and it goes back to my pizza days, but shared mail coupons still work, especially for our I don't want to say our target demographic, but our current core demographic is an older audience, and they still clip coupons. They still check their mailbox every week, and that tactic is one that still works very, very well for us.
Yeah, it's tried and true. So you have your core segment there that you have success with. What about maybe new audiences that you go after? Have you placed any of your focus on just digital channels, social media channels?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, with as small as we are and the limited budgets we have to work with, paid social is what we do. from a brand level, just to support our operators. So that's a big piece. As well as, we just introduced a new mobile app and loyalty program earlier this year. That's part of this whole big refresh. We had an app before, we had a loyalty program, but they were about as stale as some of our old restaurants looked. And so we're still in the infancy with our new program, but there's a lot of places we can take that, a lot of cool things that we're going to be able to do with that as well.
Yeah, very cool. So what is your take? I'm curious on, you talk about empowering your locations with tools and capabilities to do marketing on their own. What's your take on local organic and giving your locations the reins to maybe try pushing out some of their own content, or making, some, what's the word I'm trying to say? I'm going to edit this part out here, hopefully. But what's your take on allowing them to, leverage user-generated content, or just, become the brand?
Yeah. It's funny. We've got a handful of operators that dive right into that. Most of them, quite frankly, don't either understand it or want to take the time to execute. So it's a challenge for us in terms of how much resources or effort do we put towards something that's only going to help a few and maybe not the majority. So we try to do as much of that as we can for them. Again, this is a legacy brand. It's been around for a long time. It's not a startup. In a perfect startup situation, I don't know if I would operate local social channels. But because a lot of our guys already had them, we've kind of tried to bring them in under the umbrella and do the best we can to give them some resources and tools to support. You mentioned user generated content. One of the cool things we're doing is we're working with an organization called Gift a Meal, which it's really become our primary charitable effort. And the way Gift a Meal works is our customers are able to take a photo on their mobile devices, share it through the Gift a Meal platform, and for every photo that gets shared, a meal gets donated to a local food bank. And they're able to pinpoint and allocate those donations to the food banks in our specific trade areas. So it's not going to some national group to be divvied out. It is literally going into our local markets. And so it's a really cool thing. It gives us, instead of working with the dozens or more of local food banks individually, we're able to have a unified message that we can get out there from a brand standpoint. But it does impact and affect in those local markets. So that's a really cool thing. And the great feature of it is we get all that user generated content. We get those great photos of our food that our customers are sharing with us that we can turn around then and use on social.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, it is an interesting challenge to think about when you have a legacy brand with operators that have been operating their locations for years, right? It's a shift and a change to really get them to adopt new forms of technology, new ways to communicate with audiences, especially, when they're become a little more comfortable with their core segment, their core audience. Bringing in new young audiences requires, engagement on social. And the cool thing about it is it's relatively cheap. It's one of those things, like we live in a time right now where if you want to engage with your local community, the cheapest, like most effective way to do that is going to be through organic social media. Like you get out of it what you put into it. So if you actually put forth a lot of effort generating content, going around to the community, engaging with others, highlighting different heroes in your community, sharing their stories, you eventually, create this kind of momentum and groundswell through your social channels within your community. It's a fantastic tool that we've never had access to in the past.
Yeah, there's no doubt. But like you mentioned, you know, I talked about the demographics, the aging demographics of our core customer being a legacy brand, especially being in the category that we're in. But those same demographics apply to our operators, right? So it's more of I'm fortunate that in a lot of instances we have some second generation operators, starting to get involved in their parents' business, and those folks, they're on social themselves, and they see the importance of it, and maybe they can either convince their parents, or maybe they could take the reins themselves. We've had that in some instances, but yeah, it's a challenge to get folks that have been running these fried chicken joints for 40 plus years to learn about new technology or understand the importance of it. The additional challenge that I've got is a lot of our restaurants, the bulk of our restaurants, are in small to mid-sized communities. They're not in major metros. And so,
Yeah.
You mentioned I grew up in a town of 700 people. I know what small town life is like. Now, granted, we don't have any fried chicken restaurants in towns of 700, but still, things move a little bit slower. People aren't quite as tech engaged in more rural communities. Doesn't mean the younger generation isn't. They certainly are, but it just has a little less importance to people there. So that's a challenge that we have in trying to get people, motivated to do more.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's marketing at its core, right? Understanding your audience and knowing what to say to them and where to say it. So if your audience isn't on these channels, then you have to find other ways to do so, whether it's to different community events or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's right. Like, doesn't mean that people in those communities aren't. It's just it's that combination of folks that have been doing this for a long time and haven't seen that shift maybe personally themselves, and then also maybe that just it's a little more under the surface in those areas than it is in the major metros where everybody's on tech all the time.
Yeah, for sure. What are some, like, if you had a brand out there that you think is doing like some really interesting, really cool, really engaging things, maybe on social or whatever channel, like, who would you want to give a shout out to?
Yeah, I've got a good friend, Kim Freer, who just stepped into the CMO role at Raising Cane's, and she has inherited a really great local marketing infrastructure there at Raising Cane's. I've always been a fan of what they do, both from a social aspect and also just from a boots on the ground grassroots marketing standpoint. They've, from their early days, have invested in like having the human capital it takes to execute at the local level. So that's been a brand that I always keep my eyes on. And then I've got several friends on the Firehouse Subs team, and I've always been impressed with their level of community engagement. When you walk into a firehouse and you see those localized murals on the wall, right away that they're engaged in their communities, and that they care about their local neighborhoods. And I think that spills through in their social channels as well.
Yeah, those are both great examples. And shout out to you for calling out someone in the same category. I mean, not everybody does that, but it's true. Like, as a marketer, it's very rare when you do something brand new, right? A lot of it's about seeing what's out there and being inspired to take that and take it to the next level. So when you have brands that are in the same category that you emulate, like, that's just more motivation, inspiration to help you kind of.
I will say we're only really partially in the same category because they have a very, very limited menu and we have more broad offering base. But yeah, we both sell chicken. Who doesn't sell chicken these days, right?
Who doesn't? That's right. Awesome. Well, hey, I was doing a little bit of digging in your background and trying to figure out about you, like whatever I could learn. And that was a crappy intro. I'm going to go ahead and edit that out. So, just to switch gears a little bit, Dan, you come from a small town, and you said you're a big baseball fan, and I was instantly I went to if you build it, they will come, the Field of Dreams and stuff, and I thought, how cool it would be to actually show you as an actual baseball player, knowing that you're a big St. Louis Cardinal fans. Tried to pull this one together. Here's Dan on the mound with a little bit of mullet waving in the wind.
I love it. I was never a pitcher, but that would have been cool if I was.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, hey, it was a ton of fun having you in the lab here. Before we get going, why don't you tell listeners how to follow you, how to follow your brand?
Yeah. You can find me on LinkedIn. And really that's the best place for industry folks to follow what's going on with our brand as well. Least Famous Recipe Chicken on LinkedIn. Lot of cool things happening for us, and some new development deals in the works. Looking to get continue this evolution of both remodeling and building new ground up restaurants with this new look and feel. You say if we build it, if you build it, they will come. That's the approach we're taking with really trying to clean up our physical plants as well. So keep an eye out for what we're doing.
Very cool. Yeah. So that does it for today. Follow, subscribe to Dan, to Lee's Famous Recipe Chicken on social. Stop in, grab some chicken. It's been around for a while. It's award winning. I've seen it on the site. So check it out. Dan, this was awesome. Thanks again for joining us in the lab, my friend.
You got it. Thank you.
As always, thanks for joining us in the Local Marketing Lab. This podcast is brought to you by Evocalize. To learn how Evocalize can help you grow your business, visit evocalize.com. If you learned something new from today's episode, don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook at Evocalize. That's EVOCALIZE. And on X at Evocalize Inc. And remember, keep innovating and trying new things. You never know what's going to connect with your audience until you try. And until next time, thanks for listening.